The key didn't work. I stood on the front steps of the house I had lived in for 3 years, the house where I had painted the kitchen cabinets sage green, the house where I had planted lavender along the front walkway, and my key would not turn. I tried it again. Then a third time. I told myself maybe I was tired, maybe I was shaking too much. My hands had been unsteady for 4 days since the phone call from the hospital, since the word "gone" was used in a sentence about my husband. I stepped back and looked at the door. The lock was new. Brushed nickel. We had an oil-rubbed bronze lock. I knew because I had picked it out myself at the hardware store on a Saturday morning 2 summers ago while my husband complained that all locks looked the same. I had laughed at him. I remembered laughing. This lock was not the one I picked out. I didn't understand it yet. That's the thing, no one tells you about shock. It doesn't feel like shock, it feels like confusion. Like the world has made a small clerical error and you're waiting for someone to come correct it. I walked around to the back of the house. The sliding glass door was locked. The small bathroom window I sometimes left cracked was shut. I stood in the backyard, in the November cold, holding my purse against my chest, and I called my husband's phone out of habit. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. His voice said he'd call me back. He said it cheerfully, like he always did. I hung up before the beep. I called my sister-in-law instead, his younger sister, the one who had cried the hardest at the funeral 2 days ago, the one who had held my hand during the burial. She didn't answer. I called my mother-in-law. She picked up on the second ring. The locks have been changed, I said. There was a pause, not the pause of someone surprised. The pause of someone who had been waiting. We need to talk about the house, she said. I'm standing outside of it, I said. I know, she said. Come to our place, we'll explain everything. I didn't go to their place. I sat in my car, in my own driveway, in front of my own house, and I tried to think clearly. My husband had been dead for 96 hours. I had just watched them lower him into the ground. I had not slept more than 2 hours at a stretch since Monday. And now the locks had been changed on the house I lived in, the house I had a legal right to occupy, and my mother-in-law wanted to explain everything. I want to be honest about why I didn't call the police that night. It wasn't weakness, though I've had people suggest that since. It was grief. Pure, disorienting grief. My brain was not working at full capacity. I didn't know what my rights were. I didn't know that as a legally married spouse I had automatic legal standing to that property, regardless of whose name was technically on the deed. I didn't know that what they had done was, at minimum, a civil wrong, and possibly a criminal one. I just knew that I couldn't think straight, and that my mother-in-law had always been a forceful woman, and that I was 29 years old and my husband was dead and I had nowhere to sleep. I drove to a Marriott 6 miles away. I paid with my own credit card. I sat on the bed in my coat and I stared at the wall. My husband and I had been married for 3 years. We met at a work conference. He was in pharmaceutical sales, I was doing marketing for a mid-size healthcare company, and we were friends for 8 months before anything romantic happened. He was steady and funny, and he always read the whole menu before ordering, which sounds like a small thing, but I found it deeply reassuring. We got married at the City Botanical Garden on a Saturday in May. His mother wore a dress the color of champagne and made a toast that was primarily about herself. I smiled through the whole thing. That's what you do. His name was Daniel. He died of a cardiac event at 34. He had no diagnosed heart condition. He went for a run on a Tuesday morning and he didn't come back. These things happen. Doctors told me so, in careful voices, like they were afraid I would shatter. I did shatter, but not in front of them. The house was in Daniel's name. This is the detail that his family had apparently been holding on to like a weapon, waiting for the right moment to use it. We had talked about adding my name to the deed. We had never gotten around to it. I have thought about that incomplete errand every day since. The morning after I found the locks changed, I went to the house while his mother was still there. I knocked on the door. She opened it and looked at me the way you look at someone who has shown up where they're not expected. I need my things, I said. Of course, she said, we'll arrange for that. She did not invite me in. I stood in the doorway of my own home while she stood slightly in front of me, as if positioning herself between me and the interior. I could see past her shoulder. My throw blanket, the chunky cream one I bought at Target, was draped across the arm of the sofa. Someone had moved it. It had been folded neatly, in a way I never folded it. "I'd like to come in now," I said. "I think it's better if we do this through the right channels," she said. "We've spoken to a lawyer." That word lawyer landed differently than I expected. Not as a threat, as a signal. She had prepared for this. She had known Daniel was sick, had known it was serious, and she had prepared for what would happen to the house when he died. That was the moment I understood that this was not impulsive grief. This was a plan. I drove back to the Marriott. I ordered room service I didn't eat. And then I opened my laptop and I started reading about spousal inheritance rights. What I found over the next several hours was clarifying in the way that cold water is clarifying. I learned that in most states, a surviving spouse has significant legal protections even without being on the deed. I learned that without a will, and I had no knowledge of Daniel leaving a will, the law generally defaults to the spouse as the primary heir. I learned that changing the locks on a property occupied by a spouse could constitute unlawful exclusion. I learned that I had options. I also found something else. A number I'd seen before, the name of the attorney Daniel had mentioned casually, once, maybe 8 months ago. He'd said something like, "My mom had me go over some paperwork with her guy." I had not thought about it at the time. I thought about it now. I wrote the name down. I found a family law attorney through a referral from a colleague who had gone through a divorce the previous year. Her name was Patricia, and she had short silver hair and the kind of quiet confidence that comes from having seen everything at least twice. I sat in her office with a manila folder of everything I could put my hands on: our marriage certificate, our joint bank statements, tax returns with both our names, utility bills from the house, photos of us there. She looked through all of it without expression. "Was there a will?" she asked. "Not that I know of," I said. "But I've been locked out of the house, so I can't access anything there." "Did he ever mention estate planning?" I thought about the lawyer's name. I thought about the paperwork Daniel's mother had him go over. "His mother had him meet with her attorney about 8 months ago," I said. "I don't know what was discussed." Patricia looked at me steadily. "That's worth investigating," she said. "But let me be clear about one thing first. As his legally married spouse, you have rights here that do not disappear because your name isn't on the deed. They changed those locks without legal authority. That's where we start. It is an unusual feeling, having someone tell you that you have rights when you have spent the past week feeling like you have nothing." I cried in her office. She handed me a tissue box without breaking stride. Over the next 2 weeks, I lived out of the Marriott, and then, when that felt too expensive and too lonely, at my own parents' house an hour away. My mother made me soup I didn't taste and left books on my nightstand I couldn't read. My father didn't know what to say to me, so he said very little, and somehow that was the right choice. Patricia moved quickly. She sent a formal letter to my mother-in-law's attorney asserting my spousal rights and requesting immediate access to the property. The response came back within a week, and it contained something I had not expected: a copy of a document my mother-in-law claimed was Daniel's will. Signed 11 months before his death. Leaving the house and the majority of his estate to his mother and sister. I read it sitting at my parents' kitchen table. My mother watched me from across the room. "What does it say?" she asked. "He left everything to his family," I said. She went very still. "Daniel did that?" "That's what this document says." I sent it to Patricia immediately. She called me that evening. "This is dated 11 months ago," she said. "Around the time you mentioned his mother had him meet with her attorney." "Yes," I said. How was Daniel's relationship with his mother generally? I thought about how to answer that. My mother-in-law had always had a particular hold on Daniel, not malicious, exactly, or not always, but strong. She was the kind of woman who framed everything as being in the family's best interest. She had opinions about the house, about our finances, about whether we should have children sooner rather than later. Daniel would push back, and then she would cry or go quiet, and then he would soften. He loved her. He also, I think, was sometimes afraid of disappointing her. She had influence over him, I said carefully. I want to look at the circumstances around when this was signed, Patricia said. There are legal grounds to contest a will if there's evidence of undue influence, if someone in a position of authority over the testator used that influence to shape the will in their favor. Given the timing, given that this was signed with her attorney present, I think we have grounds to investigate. I want to be clear that I do not know, with certainty, what happened when Daniel sat in that attorney's office 11 months ago. I do not know what was said to him or how it was framed. I do not know if he fully understood what he was signing, or if he was told it was something else, or if he understood and did it anyway because saying no to his mother was something he had never fully learned how to do. I try not to let myself go too far down that road. It is not a road that ends anywhere good. What I do know is what we found when we started pulling on threads. The attorney his mother used had done estate work for her family for 20 years. He had a financial relationship with a property investment group that my mother-in-law's brother was involved in. The will had been signed during a period when Daniel had been dealing with some work stress and had mentioned, in passing, feeling overwhelmed. A coworker of his, a friend, told me during this period that Daniel had seemed off in the weeks before, distracted, a little withdrawn. None of this is a smoking gun. But together, it built a picture. There was also this. 3 weeks after Daniel died, I went back to the house with a police officer. Patricia had arranged for an official access request, and I was permitted to collect my personal belongings. I was given 90 minutes with an officer present. I moved through the rooms of my own home like a guest, like a stranger, while my mother-in-law sat in the living room and watched me. I did not look at her. I had made a decision about that. What I was looking for and what I found, in the bottom drawer of the desk in Daniel's home office, under a folder of old tax documents, was a letter, handwritten, undated. In Daniel's handwriting, which I would know anywhere because it was large and slightly uneven and he always crossed his sevens. It was not a legal document. It was not a formal will. But it was a letter, addressed to me, and it said, "I've been meaning to fix the deed. I'm going to fix it. I want you to know this is yours, as much as mine. I should have done this already. I'm sorry I keep putting it off." It was not signed. I don't know when he wrote it. It may have been written before the official will, or after, or somewhere in between. But it existed. He had written it and put it there, in that drawer, where I would eventually find it. I held it for a long time in that room, with the officer standing quietly in the doorway, and I did not cry. I had made a decision about that too. Patricia used the letter, along with the other evidence, as part of a broader challenge to the will. The grounds were undue influence, and the circumstantial case was, she told me, stronger than average. The relationship between the drafting attorney and my mother-in-law's family, the timing, the pattern of her involvement in Daniel's financial decisions. The fact that I, his wife of 3 years, had been given essentially nothing. The case did not go to trial. My mother-in-law's attorney, after several months of correspondence and one mediation session that I attended with Patricia and did not speak at except when required, recommended settlement. My mother-in-law agreed, eventually, to relinquish the house. I believe she was advised that a trial was not a risk worth taking. There is a specific moment I return to from the mediation. It was late afternoon, and the room was one of those conference rooms with windows that look out onto other buildings. My mother-in-law was across the table from me. We had not spoken directly in months. She looked older than she had at the funeral. I don't say that to be unkind, grief does that to people, and she had lost her son, and I do not forget that. She was a mother who lost her child. What she did to me does not erase that. But at one point during a break, when the attorneys had stepped out and it was just the two of us for a few minutes, she said to me, "He loved you, you know." I looked at her. "I know that," I said. She looked at the table. "I just wanted something of him," she said. Something to hold on to. I sat with that for a moment, and then I said as evenly as I could, "So did I." We didn't say anything else before the attorneys came back. I moved back into the house in the early spring. The lavender along the front walkway had survived the winter, which surprised me. The kitchen still smelled faintly like the coffee Daniel made every morning, dark roast, too strong, the smell that had annoyed me for 3 years and that I would now give a significant amount of money to smell again. I changed the locks myself. I went to the same hardware store where we had picked out the original ones, and I stood in the aisle for a long time looking at the options. I chose oil-rubbed bronze, the same finish we had before. My mother came over the first weekend and we repainted the spare room, which my mother-in-law had inexplicably painted gray in the months she occupied the house. I chose a warm white. We worked in comfortable silence, the way you can with someone who has known you your whole life, and when we finished, my mother stood back and looked at the room and said, "This looks like you." I have thought about that sentence a lot since. This looks like you. I spent a long time in this house, feeling like a guest in my own life, not because Daniel made me feel that way, never that, but because of the degree to which his family defined the terms. What his mother was. How often we visited. What kind of place we were building. I had been making myself small in ways I hadn't fully noticed, smoothing over things I should have addressed, postponing conversations I should have had. Because it was easier, and because I was young, and because I told myself that's just how families are. It's not though. Or, it doesn't have to be. The garden is mine now, in a way, it never quite was when I was always half-braced for criticism. I planted tomatoes this year, which Daniel was lukewarm about. I built a small raised bed along the back fence, and I put in herbs, rosemary, thyme, more lavender, and on Saturday mornings I go out there in the early light and it is quiet in a way that is not lonely. It took me a long time to learn the difference between quiet and lonely. I'm still learning. His mother and I do not speak. His sister texted me once, about 6 months after the settlement, to say she was sorry for her part in what happened. I read the message 3 times. I did not respond right away. I still haven't, and I'm not sure if I will. Some doors, once they've been changed, don't open the same way twice. What I want to say, to anyone who is reading this and who has ever been made to feel like an outsider in their own story. Your name doesn't have to be on the document for something to belong to you. Your rights don't disappear because someone more aggressive has decided to act like they don't exist. And shock is real, and grief is real, and the fact that you didn't react the way you wish you had in the moment of crisis does not mean you failed. It means you are human under inhuman pressure. Know your rights. Talk to an attorney sooner than feels necessary. And if someone changes the locks on you while you are standing at the lowest point of your life, understand that a lock is just a lock. It is not the final word on anything. I still have the letter. The one from Daniel, the undated one from the desk drawer. I keep it in the same folder as our marriage certificate. I want you to know, this is yours, as much as mine. It is. It always was. It just took me a while to prove it.